This changes everything for the Steelers as they just signed a brand new running back. My name is Peyton Kleppe, and on today's episode of Steelers Digest, we'll be breaking down the latest Pittsburgh Steelers analysis and reports regarding the Pittsburgh Steelers football team. As the Pittsburgh Steelers lose Najee Harris in free agent, they have signed a running back in his relief. Before we get into the latest reports, if you guys are not already currently subscribed to the channel, click that subscribe button down below. Only 9% of our current viewers are actually currently subscribed. So if you click that subscribe button, we will get you guys the latest Pittsburgh Steelers news every single day. Let's get right into it. The Pittsburgh Steelers have signed Trey Sermon. This was a guy that coming out of college, he was a pretty high-touted guy. I believe he did play at Ohio State. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments below. But he did get drafted to the 49ers originally. Did not really play too much in San Fran. Obviously, they've had a ton of running backs in that running back room in the past couple years. Elijah Mitchell, Jordan Mason, Christian McCaffrey, just to name some few. But yeah, Trey Sermon, I believe after that, he went to the Eagles. Didn't do much there. Obviously, they've had guys like DeAndre Swift and obviously last year Saquon Barkley. So they really haven't had the need for Trey Sermon. But latest, he did go to the Indianapolis Colts last year and played pretty well for them when, Jonathan Taylor was out with injury. He was that number 2 running back. A few years ago, it was Zach Moss who came into relief for Jonathan Taylor. But Trey Sermon was that running back 2 in Indianapolis and played pretty good for them in relief of their starter. This dude rushed for, I believe, over like 200 or 300 rushing yards, had multiple touchdowns, like 3 or 4. So this guy is only 26 as well. He's still pretty young NFL running back, and he fits pretty well into the Steelers offense. He is another guy that, he can catch out of the backfield. He's pretty quick on his feet, and he just fits right in. The Steelers just needed more depth at that running back position. We're definitely going to go at running back by committee this year. Obviously, the starting guy will presumably be Jaylen Warren at that running back number 1 position. Jaylen Warren is a guy that we signed in 2022 at running back coming out of Snow College. He was an undrafted free agent, and he proved to Coach Tomlin every single year why he deserved a shot as a starter in the NFL. From being undrafted to a starting running back position, that's a lot of work, and people don't really appreciate that. Really don't give him the gratitude and honor that he believes or he deserves. Jaylen Warren's been a great player for us, and I do expect him to get a multi-year deal if he has over 1,000 yards or shows out for us this next coming year. But we also did draft Caleb Johnson in the 3rd round. He is a guy that people have compared to Najee Harris, but also have compared to Le'Veon Bell. He is a little bit quicker than Najee Harris. We all know coming out of college, Najee was kind of slow, and it looked like he was running in mud sometimes when he was playing for us. And if you guys remember Le'Veon Bell, his patience, his vision, that's what people see in Caleb Johnson, And Caleb Johnson, he is a young guy, and I do expect the Pittsburgh Steelers to utilize him a lot, as they did Najee Harris his rookie year. He's a fresh set of legs for Coach Tomlin. As we know, Coach Tomlin does like to run his running backs into the ground, going back to, like I said, Le'Veon Bell, James Conner, who he still has been having some success in the NFL for the Arizona Cardinals. Shout out James Conner, Pittsburgh legend. Anyways, I do expect, Trey Sermon to get some snaps, though, for the Pittsburgh Steelers because, like I said, it's going to be a running back by committee. We also signed Kenneth Gainwell, who is a pretty similar player to Trey Sermon, a 2nd, 3rd down running back who's just going to come in for relief of the first down running back, a kind of a change of pace back. Trey Sermon has not really been the number 1 guy in any offense. Like, I don't expect him to come in here and be the starter for Pittsburgh and have over 1,000 yards. I just kind of expect him to come in, maybe play some special teams, maybe play a few snaps here and there, catch some balls out the backfield, get a few first downs, and just contribute to the team. Because I do also believe we have Cordell Patterson on the roster still, who is 30-something years old. So we're going to have a pretty crowded running back room. But, we want that going into this season. A lot of positions are up in the air, and Coach Tomlin's really leaving it up to these guys to just compete and keep fighting to try to get that number 1 running back position. I talk about Jaylen Warren like he is already been named the starting running back. He hasn't, though. The Pittsburgh Steelers love bringing these competitive guys together and not really naming a starter, and that's why I was excited about George Pickens and DK Metcalf, but we all know how that went. George Pickens goes to the Cowboys anyways. But it is good to look at this running back room and look at all these different talents that we brought in here. Trey Sermon, just another talented guy that the Pittsburgh Steelers want to add to their roster. And all these guys combined, we're going to get one good guy. We got like 6 different guys on the roster, so there's going to be at least one guy who's going to show out. And I do expect it to be Caleb Johnson or Jaylen Warren. Those are the 2 top guys in Pittsburgh right now. If we're looking at pedigree and just what they've done already, I mean, Caleb Johnson is a rookie, don't get me wrong, but this dude is talented. He showed out in Iowa. He had like 1,500 rushing yards last year, over 20 rushing touchdowns. So I do expect this dude to come in the NFL, come in hot, and have some pretty amazing games for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And now our offense will really be designed for Arthur Smith. This is his second year being the offensive coordinator for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So he definitely had some say in signing Trey Sermon and all these other guys who he thinks he could fit into his offense and, get this thing going. The Pittsburgh Steelers offense has really struggled since, I'd say, probably 2019 season when we lost Antonio Brown. Even though we still had Big Ben, we really didn't have too many receivers back then. And once we started getting receivers, we didn't have a quarterback. So, we've had a lot of ups and downs in Pittsburgh these past couple years, but it's been pretty on the downward spiral for our offense these past couple years. So, I do have some hope in some of these picks that we did pick up, and I do have some hope in Will Howard and DK Metcalf and Jaylen Warren and possibly Trey Sermon. This guy, like I said, he still is young. He's 26 years old. He's younger than Najee Harris. Najee Harris, another reason why I'm glad the Pittsburgh Steelers didn't sign him is because he turned 27. How many more years does this guy have of good football left? As sorry as I am to say that, the running backs in the NFL, the lifespan is not what it used to be back in the day. It's like 3 or 4 years max of your prime. And then after that, most teams are going to kick you to the curb because they're not paying running backs like they did in the past. So I expect, just some competition in this running back room. And I'm glad that Coach Tomlin brings in another running back to our running back room, just add to that competition and, help build this offense because I do think we have some pieces. It's just putting it all together and finally getting the right quarterback to hold these guys all together. If we don't end up getting Aaron Rodgers, I do have some belief in Mason Rudolph. As much as you guys love to hate on Mason Rudolph or as much as you guys like to love Mason Rudolph, this dude has proved who he can be in the black and gold. His last couple games in the Pittsburgh Steelers uniforms, he didn't play too bad. In Tennessee, he obviously had a pretty terrible team, pretty terrible head coaching staff. So you got to give Mason some credit. This guy has earned to be the starter in Pittsburgh. Just give him a shot. Give him a shot, see how he does. If he sucks, it's okay. He's still a Pittsburgh guy. We'll appreciate him, but obviously we'll have to move on and try to draft a quarterback in next year's draft. Unfortunately, that is all I have for you guys tonight on Steelers Digest. If you guys are not already currently subscribed to the channel, click that subscribe button down below. Thank you so much. Here we go, Steelers. Peace out, boys.